I do not know how to kind of go about this. This is the first time I am officially rating this game. I have all of my notes kind of pulled up here. And yeah, so just to remind everyone, I am rating games based off of what it looks like 10. So it's going to be freedom and choices, story/writing, progression, which is like an ease to challenge ratio, a world building, replayability, graphics/design, voice acting, and if there is no voice acting, just characters themselves, music/sound, controls/system registry, and personal enjoyment. So there are 10 there, and then I am going to be rating them each from 0 to 10 to the 10th place, so 1 decimal point. And then I'll take all of those and average them out to get a total score, which will be in the 100th place, so 2 decimal places. Because if I'm rating a game and it ends up being 8.9 and then 8.9, then I don't really know how to like discern that, but maybe it's 8.91 and 8.93. That way I'll have a more accurate rating of which one's higher or lower, etc. So I'm going to be doing that. Yeah, so inFAMOUS. Freedom and choices. That's the first one. I wrote down everything. Oh, and my ratings, I would say for good, it's anywhere between 10 to 7.1. If it's within 10 to 7.1, that's a good rating. If it's between 7.0 and 4.1, it's okay. It's like, it's fine. Like, there's nothing to write home about. It's not bad, but it's not amazing. Bad, however, is anywhere between 4.0 and 0.0. Or 4.0, 0, just 0, right? That would be bad. Like, there's no reason why any of these things should happen. Like, if it's glitching every 5 seconds, like, these would be problems. That is just, it shouldn't happen, but it did happen, so it's bad. I don't know. 4.0 to 0. So, good, 10 to 7.1. Okay is 7.0 to 4.1. And bad is 4.0 to 0.0. All right, just putting that out there. Going forward, that is what it's going to be. Freedom/choices. So for inFAMOUS, the things that I liked was more, you can go where you want. Like, you can collect the dead drops, the blast shards, you can do side missions if you want to. You don't have to. You don't even have to collect all the dead drops and blast shards. There were karma choices, like good, bad karmas, you know, pretty split decision on that. You can choose to upgrade, you can choose not to upgrade, like kind of what I was doing for a long time. You can also choose to explore or not explore. You can like learn more about each district, etc. Interactions, like you can choose to, you know, answer when the people say, hey, we need help, like this person's dying. You can choose to attack them. You can do whatever you want, which I liked. The problem, which seems to be the only real main problem for me, is that you're always kind of confined to like an invisible wall or space. At some locations, it like seems very obvious and prevalent throughout the map. Even on a building where you are able to be on and move, there are some restrictions on that. And the other thing was, for me, that I wrote down was there's also no neutral option. I don't think that was the intended purpose of the game, so it's not really a huge deal, but I just threw that in there. So overall, for freedom and choices, I'm giving it a 9.8. Other than like the confined spaces / invisible walls, which honestly can get pretty annoying, and no neutral option, you have a lot of freedom. You have a lot of choices. So 9.8. It is almost perfect. Like basically no flaws with the freedom and choices, other than the others. For story / writing, there was a lot to this. I feel like the ideas were there, but I feel like it was rushed into the game. And I know games more so back then had like deadlines to meet, but it did feel rushed. I feel like for the story, really it lacked very early establishment between Cole and Trish, which wouldn't be a terrible thing if it wasn't like the biggest part of the entire story, right? And my questions were like, how long have they been together? Were they ever engaged? Were they, was it all good? How did they meet? Like, were they in school together? Like, I don't know. And if it's so much like they had love, then show me that early, because, you know, if you don't, which they kind of didn't, then how am I supposed to be very sympathetic and whatnot going forward? That said, at the ending of the game seemed to raise more questions than answer them, for me personally. So it's like time travel, like that was a thing? How is that a thing? There are other villains potentially? Like, please expand on that. Like, I don't really know who specifically the other villain was. And maybe it was purposely left ambiguous, but for me, that was a little bit, I don't know, it just seems rushed. Also, there was a consistent theme of like no real sympathy for Zeke, even though there are like obvious solutions. And even so with karma choices, like if you chose to have good karma, you should be more forgiving for Zeke. And if you had bad karma, you should have been more vengeful, which seemed to me, because I was playing with the good intentions, it seemed to be vengeful. And I don't know if they wrote any difference in that. So I don't know. I feel like the hate on Zeke was going to happen whether you were good karma or bad karma. And I almost basically maxed out the good karma. So I don't know. Additionally, the story was not necessarily unique or new. Like, it was kind of like a mixture of all like superheroes. I know that's kind of what they were doing. But my initial thought was like Hulk or Spider-Man, like those, the way he has powers, the way the situations happened, being chased, having like no one to really fall back on, and feeling like everything's on you, but also having jealous friends. Like, I don't know, it seemed reminiscent of that. But in general, like, they did make a new superhero. And for a video game with options, that is great. That is awesome. However, for the story, for the writing, my big criticism is if Trish was the biggest factor on all of this, then you should have given me more to be more sympathetic and have that choice be made later on. So for that story / writing, surprisingly, I am going to give it a 3.8. I don't think it was good. I do think it was very rushed, and I have to assume that the developers had a deadline, probably had that in mind on what to do, but had to cut a lot of things, which left a lot of questions and holes throughout the story. So, yeah, starting off really strong with freedom and choices, and then pretty bad with the story and writing. But progression, so the ease to challenge ratio. For me, I've never played this game before, obviously, so the flow of the game overall just seemed to progress so nicely. So without any massive jumps in difficulty, although I could have adjusted it with the difficulty setting, so it's like, oh, if it's too easy, bump it up to hard or medium, or if it's too hard, bump it down to medium or easy. Like, I could have done any of those, but I wanted it to be strictly the way it is. How the game was developed, I don't want it too easy, I don't want it too hard. That's why going forward also, it's just going to be normal. It's just going to be what I think the intended purpose was. But without the manual adjustment throughout the game itself seemed to give you the basics like very well, while slowly introducing like more powerful enemies and new powers. So it was a repetitive task going into the sewers, but each time you did, you learned how to jump, you learned how to use your power, you learned a new power, and it taught you kind of how to use those new powers. And then the side missions just kind of brought that home. So that was also really nice. I do think in general, I think it was a little too easy. There's not much of a challenge to progress throughout the game. Like, I didn't even upgrade anything, but I could still do it. Really, I think the hardest thing was the uplinks, and at most, maybe that took me like 10 attempts. Like, it wasn't terrible. Even the bosses were not that hard. Once you learned the pattern of what they're going to do, I don't really think it was that hard. But that being said, I think they did it so well that I'm going to give progression, so the ease to challenge ratio, a 9.7. So that was, I think it was really well done. Next is world building. The world within the game, it seemed to be like an amalgamation of major cities, more specifically reminiscent of like New York or Pittsburgh. Like islands, bridges, water sources, whatever, a lot of metal structures. Even within the world, the people are affected by the quarantine, the explosion, the gang violences, if you even want to call it that, and the lack of help from the military or other officials. Yet they're still roaming outside, which kind of made me laugh a little bit, because if all this danger is going on, and with a quarantine, with not necessarily riots, but gang violence like happening all the time, and people actively looking for other people to shoot, I would stay inside. But yeah, I understand that this is based around a lot of supernatural fiction, kind of similar to a superhero comic. But really, there wasn't anything too special about the world itself. Just really a great idea put into a video game. So for world building, I gave it a 7. I don't think it's good, as in 7.1 or higher. I don't think it's amazing. I think it's all right, but I don't think it's bad all right. I think it's more good all right, but I don't think it's good itself, if that even makes sense. All right, next one is replayability. Excuse me. That one, the game does a wonderful job wanting you to replay as either a good or a bad character, with like good or bad karma for like the powers, the upgrades, the possible dialogue changes, the quote changes, the interactions among characters, and even the NPCs. In terms of exploration, though, it seems like finding all the shards or dead drops, that might be a one-time thing. You're probably not going to replay the game to find out all the dead drops and shards and whatnot. Like, you probably don't want to do that unless you are being like speedrunning, or what they say, like trying to get everything 100% completion in a certain amount of time. Unless you're doing that, I don't think people would actively want to do that again. Potentially, though, you have about like 3 or 4 playthroughs before you get a full picture of what the game is about, like good versus bad karma changes, understanding the map, so the exploration across each district, and overall understanding of like the characters and the story. That would take about 3 to 4. Most certainly, however, you would at least want to do it one more time. At least I would, just so I can do the, I guess, bad karma, like to become quote-unquote infamous. So because of that, its replayability to me is a 10 out of 10. I think it is a 10.0 because you can replay it multiple times to see the very finite changes. But what makes a really good replayable game is you really have the drive to do it again at least one more time. So I think that is amazing. I think they did a great job on that. Next is graphics / design. The designs for each character was very purposeful. Like for me, that's a good thing. Like Cole is more neutral, like starting out. Trish was being more of a medic. Zeke was being slightly flashy, but may have been compensating for something. The villains also had a great set of designs. With Alden, I think the mentalist guy, the telekinesis guy, he was all disheveled and worn down. He was kind of like kicked out onto the curb, whatever. So it made sense. Sasha is my secret admirer. She's creepy but seductive at the same time, so her character also makes sense. Like Kessler being mysterious and unnerving, like with like the cloak and everything. Honestly, it was great. The Reapers were cloaked in red early, so they were symbolizing the immediate understanding of, hey, these are your enemies. The Dustmen in the Warren wore trash bags that showed their mental state and how far they were gone. And the First Sons, which I think were the enemy names in the historic district, had they seemed less out of it because they had technology and they had intent, like power behind their outfits. So that was always nice. So those were like really good designs. Like the villains, amazing. Pretty basic with the main set of people, but the villains, awesome. I love that. Overall, the basic NPCs kind of just repeated. They didn't have much to them other than the occasional clothing change, backpack, and face mask here and there. The buildings, the cars, the roads, the districts in general were made well. Like they weren't made poorly, especially for its time. But it was just mediocre at best. Like it was, for lack of a better word, banal in understanding that the city is in shambles. Like it was, I get it. Like I understand. So there was not much difference also between each district other than the enemies. So like the sewers were the same, the buildings were the same, NPCs were basically the same. And personally, I think they should have changed slightly. I think it should have. That way it would show more purpose in the difference in like people. Or, I'm sorry, enemies. So overall, 6.5. I think it was okay. I think it was all right, but I do not think that... I don't think it was amazing. I think other than the villains, there could have been more done. But once again, I think that's just because it was rushed. So 6.5 for graphics and design. For voice acting or characters, I love them in general, like their designs and whatnot. So the characters are fine. Their designs are amazing. I think, however, their motives are questionable and their actions and emotions are confusing to me. I think, once again, that was just because it was rushed. I think that's just the story. So that's the characters. The voice acting, overall, the voice actors did an amazing job, overall. But I'm not a fan of Cole's voice acting being so stereotypical. So, you know, the gravelly, deep, cool voice. Like, it's very stereotypical. Like, most of those voice actors have that type of voice. So it's a very cool speaking voice, but it's very terrible with high and low inflections and very powerful emotions. Like, it's hard to scream like that. Like, even when I try and do it just right now very quickly, it was just hard on your throat. That's probably what she said. Okay. Anyway, so more so, I would wish that Cole's voice actor would become more lighthearted and soft the more good karma you have, and angrier and more gravelly as you had more bad karma. So, yeah. But the villains, once again, amazing. I can't complain about their voices at all. I think they did a great job. So yeah, voice acting / characters, I'm going to give it an 8.6. I don't think it's in the 9 category, but it was amazing. I do actually like it. Okay, then music / sound. There was a lot of music in the game, a lot of kind of like background music. And it had a lot of mixtures between the intense and the dangerous. And it does pair well with the world it was built around. So once again, very purposeful, very nice. And I think in terms of audio mixing, there was only like a couple of issues with the sound, either getting too loud or too soft at like odd moments. But to my knowledge, in my recollection, really, it only happened like twice, so it's not a huge deal, but it did happen. That said, the more miscellaneous sounds of like the people, the cars, the guns, each of the powers, the explosives, the radio dishes, the water, the echoing in the sewers, the statics, the trains, all of this, I think it meshed together so well, and it was not overly overbearing overall, you know. So for music and sound, I gave it a 9.3. Controls / system registry. So the controls for each powers, like the blasts, the shields, or the blast differences in the shields and whatnot, they were all very easy to understand and use, so not too complicated. The system registry, like when I did each input, it didn't have any flaws other than like maybe a slight delay of like, I don't know, a fraction of a second or half a second here and there. That also could just be because it was an older game. It could also be user error, so it could have been my fault. Yeah, but in general, each power and movement had its own not overly complicated set of buttons to control the character's movement. So that was easy to understand. I like that. The only downside really was just like the jumping and the automatic switch to like I don't know, grab on locations. And although that was like really frustrating at times, like I'm trying to jump and he's just not going or doing what I want, I can only justify that by thinking it was Cole's ability, making him forcibly grab onto areas that are more, I guess, conductive than others. So like, basically it was out of his control. So, although annoying, I can justify that, so it's okay. So for controls / system registry, I'm going to give it an 8.9. I think it was really good. Once again, not into the like level of like a 9 higher, but it was really, really, really good. So yeah. And then the last one, personal enjoyment. I personally really enjoyed this game. Like, I wouldn't say it's the greatest game I've ever played, obviously, but I've never played it. I've known about it, kind of, like, I know my brother has played it, and he liked it, and I know that other people have played it and really liked it, and heck, I know that there are multiple. They made more, so there must be a reason why they made more. But yes, I understand why. Like, I love this game. I did enjoy playing as, I guess he's a superhero, I guess, kind of. That's up for a debate. But I love the options. I love the idea that the developers had, bringing this superhero-like video game to life with this new character. And they did an amazing job making me want to play again, but this time with the quote-unquote bad karma Cole. So I can try out some of the other powers, which did look really cool, and probably a lot better than the powers that I was using. The voice acting made me laugh, just because it was a stereotype. Most voice actors kind of have that type of voice, at least from what I'm hearing. Yeah. And although the story wasn't really the best, like there were a lot of holes, a lot of flaws, I don't know. I still don't really understand some decisions that the characters made. I will say I was never bored, and I was very interested still in what was going to happen next, because I couldn't fathom what they were doing, which kind of made me want to know what was going to happen, what they were going to do. So that was a plus. And overall, this game was very well made, and I understand why people really loved it. So for me, personal enjoyment, I'm giving it an 8.2. Hilariously, when I total everything up and then divide by 10 to the hundredths place, it gave me 8.18. So my personal enjoyment was 8.2, and then rounding, the total score is still 8.2 basically. And I didn't know that, so I thought that was fun. So yeah. On one tab, I have a random number generator, from 2 to 122, because on my Excel spreadsheet from a list of all my games that I have, the very first row is basically it's titled video games, the names of the video games, and then going down is just the actual name. So it starts from 2 all the way down to 122. So that is on this random number generator. I'm gonna press it, whatever that number is, that's what I'm gonna play. So if it's inFAMOUS again, I'm going to play it as the inFAMOUS character. So I will do all the bad karma options. If it's inFAMOUS 2, that would be cool. That would be awesome. Because then it would just be basically a sequel. But yeah, I've decided I'm just going to randomize whatever it is. That's what I'm going to play. So, okay. It is 15. Let's go back. 15 is Cars. Okay. And it's the Xbox Cars, because I have 2 Cars video games. They're right next to each other. The other one is this Game Boy Cars game. It's the small cartridge. It's it's red. I don't know what the Xbox Cars game looks like, but I can probably figure that out. But okay, Cars for Xbox is the next one. So if you're interested, awesome, stick around. I will be playing it, then rating it, and picking the next one, and keep going from there. So cool, awesome. Hope we all have a good one, and I'll post y'all later. Haha.